Moira. Hello, everybody. I'm Wendy Cohen. I'm here with my colleague, Alan Wang. We are both Associate Deans. I have responsibility for PGR students in the faculty, and Alan has responsibility for PGT. And we're going to share our presentation with you, where you'll hear from both of us. I'll talk about the MRes, and Alan's going to talk to you about the MSc to try and help you understand which one is right for you. So really, it's important to think about this when you're making your applications to PG study, because lots of people are unclear about the difference between these two. They're both master's degrees, but expectations might not match reality, and it's really important that you choose the right route, because that could change what your expectations might be in relation to workload, well-being, and career progression. So on the next slide, I'm going to put this up for you, but we're going to talk you through this about what the difference is between an MSc and an MRes. So I'll hand over to Alan, who'll talk to you about the MSc.
Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everybody. For the MSc or Master of Science, it is probably one of the most or the most popular master's degrees in the UK. It is classified as a taught degree because of its structure. And as you can see from the table here, the majority of the modules or units of study that you are going to be learning from are organized by what is called a module leader and is taught by a module team. There's only about 20 to 30% in terms of weighting for the dissertation element for an MSc. A dissertation, as Wendy will explain later as well, is more of an independent research project. And because the weighting for the MSc is mostly the taught element, so you have scheduled weekly sessions with a tutor, the dissertation is only about a third. You will be allocated a supervisor to help you with the dissertation process, because we appreciate for some of you, this is the first independent research project you will be doing. But the majority of your learning on the MSc will be delivered by a tutor, and there will be regular assessment carried out throughout the module. The MSc is primarily suited for career development, professional career development, or a change of discipline. Let's say if you did your undergraduate degree in education, and for a master's, which is a higher level study, you'd like to do a degree in politics, potentially you could do that, because there's a substantial amount of taught elements. You have the time and resources to learn and to develop your understanding and your knowledge about the discipline. So it's an ideal scenario if you're thinking about developing your knowledge and understanding or change of discipline. Both MSc and MRes require independence because they are master's level learning. Students have to be really proactive in how they structure their own learning. Of course, we have already scheduled taught sessions, but the majority of the learning process outside those taught sessions will be unsupervised independent learning. So students will be studying and reading books in the library, or doing assignments, or completing activities that their tutors assign them to do. It's less independent when you compare it with an MRes or indeed a PhD, but still it requires a moderate level of independence. Okay, I'll pass on to Wendy.
Super, thanks, Alan. You can see that there's a difference then between that and the MRes, which is a Master of Research. That's very much a research-focused degree. You will, if you do an MRes, be required to do at least one taught module. Some programs might have two, depending on the program, but they are taught potentially with the MSc students. So you would have an opportunity to work with some MSc students in that taught module. But as you can see, the weighting for the dissertation and MRes is substantially higher. It's around 80%. for our MRes programs, but it depends. Some of them, it might be about 60%. And the work you'd be doing for that is an independent piece of research, writing a thesis, which is substantially giving an original contribution to knowledge, not as big as a PhD, and some see this as a suitable tester for, can I stomach a full PhD, or can I try out an MRes first? But it does require quite a high degree of independence. You will have 2 supervisors throughout your programme as an MRes candidate, all the way through, who'll be supporting you with your independent research project and producing the thesis that you produce at the end of that. So I'll move on to the next slide, which just compares this typical student journey. So I'll let Alan talk us through the MSc typical journey.
Thank you, Wendy. So for the MSc, you have a more structured learning or student journey. Typically, when you start your program, either in September or in January, you have between 3 to 4 top modules. Now, they can be all core modules, or they can be 1 or 2 elective plus 1 or 2 top modules. It really depends on the program that you've chosen. And the second semester, typically you then complete the other half of the taught modules. So it could be another 3 to 4 modules. And by the way, each module, in most cases, is worth 20 credits. The third semester, so imagine if you're starting your program in September, your third semester would start in April, and this would be the last 3 to 4 months, or in this case, 4 to 6 months. Where you focus on your PGT or master's dissertation. You'll be allocated 1 supervisor, not 2 supervisors, for the dissertation phase of your master's degree. The expectation from our side as tutors is that when you've reached the third semester, you should have the confidence and the capacity to work independently on a small scale research project under the supervision of a supervisor. So in a way, you're also kind of testing whether you have the capacity to do a research project, but typically the scale is smaller than an MRes project. Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Alan. For an MRes, when you start with us, and PGR students don't necessarily start in September or in January, they can start at various times in the year, but we do require our MRes students to start to align with when they need to undertake in the first semester the research skills training that they're required to do. And that's usually a research methods module, about a 20 credit module, probably from one of the MSc programs that we offer that's aligned to your discipline. So if that module runs in the autumn semester, then we need you to start in September. But if that module runs in the spring semester, we need you to start in the January. And the idea is that you complete that module as an underpinning for developing your research, your independent research. And then for the rest of the year, you're working on that research project. It can either be a group project or it could be on your own. It depends on the topic or the discipline, and it depends what's happening in the field that you're researching. But you will be developing an independent research question, and you will be carrying out that research project. It could be gathering data, it could be examining data, analysing data, and by the end of the year, producing a thesis for examination. There are 2 supervisors that take you through that, and there's a slightly different examination process for an MRes compared to MSc. Alan has talked about there being assessment all the way through, and your dissertation is assessed as part of that programme. But for MRes, it's examined in the same way that a PhD is examined, with an examining committee, an external examiner and an internal examiner will both read the thesis. They can require you to attend for an oral exam. They don't have to. It's not within our current regulations. It's not a requirement for MRes, but sometimes they might. So that's just one of the main differences between that dissertation or the thesis that you produce for an MRes is examined in a slightly different way.
I should also add before we move on, Wendy, that for MSc programs, see the 6 modules in semesters 1 and 2. On some programs, you have 1 research methods module, whereas on other MSc programs, you may have 2 research methods modules. So you also receive training on research methods in preparation for the dissertation. So just to clarify that, yeah.
So you can see that there's oh, excuse me, I went too far too quickly. There's a real difference in the balance of teaching and research in these 2 programs. They're both master's level. They're both requiring independent academic ability, but the MSc has far more structured teaching compared to the research time, where it's completely the opposite for the MRes. There's very little structured teaching, usually 1, sometimes 2 modules, very beginning, followed by independent research time. In terms of the skills that you'll gain, there will be some similarities, but there are some differences. So I'll let Alan tell us about the skills in an MSc that you should gain.
Yeah, so for the MSc, as we discussed earlier, is primarily to help you develop broad knowledge across a chosen discipline. Later on in the presentation, I will show you the disciplines that we're offering within humanities and social sciences. But it's very much to help you understand the current debates in the literature in your discipline, and to develop that knowledge, the current at the forefront of the field. Some of the programs will also help you develop applied professional skills. So these could be teaching skills or skills of analyzing texts or writing creative pieces, such as a poem. And students also get to develop their project management skills. For example, working on a collaborative group project with their fellow classmates, or working on a dissertation project, and develop skills such as time management, meeting the deadlines, doing independent research, conceptualizing a research project, designing a research project, and finally writing up a research project. It's about developing the skills to communicate what you know and what you've learned for non-specialist audiences. So the MSc level, at this particular level, because it's still classified as PGT, the level of work we are expecting from our students is not at publication level. So it needs to be at a level that's clear and concise for a general audience. And that's not to say that some students can also produce publication level work. And indeed, I've taught quite a few of them. Their work at MSc level in master's programs are very much at PhD level. And that's a rare exception. But in most cases, students are not producing work at publication level because it's one level below PhD. So I'll pass on to Wendy.
I'm nodding away there because there are MSc students in some dissertations that are absolutely publishable, but it's not something that's an expectation. It's not a requirement, but it can happen, and it's fantastic when it does. At the MRes, most of our students will be really at the forefront of advanced research methodology in one particular area for their project. So you don't get that same breadth across a discipline. You far more depth in a niche area of the discipline. We are expecting very quickly complex critical appraisal skills in our MRes candidates, because you need to be able to analyze the literature and identify the gap in the literature, and identify the need for what the project is. Many of our MRes students will join a research team, not all, but some do. and you may work alongside people who are doing MRes or PhD or early career researchers if you have that opportunity in that environment. And this is where there is that distinction between the dissertation in the MSc and the thesis in the MRes. One of the criteria we're looking for is, can this thesis be published? Is this work of publication grade material? Now, it might need some more work to do to it to make it ready for a peer-reviewed journal, but it is one of the things that would be an expectation, particularly if you're doing an MRes as a stepping stone into a potential career in academia and considering a PhD, then we would be encouraging you to be thinking about what parts of your MRes thesis might be publishable. There are career outcomes differences as well. There are similarities. You can certainly chop and change, but I'll let Alan share the kind of MSc typical career trajectory.
Yeah, so increasingly employers are looking for candidates who have more advanced knowledge and understanding of their chosen field. So whether your career aspiration is to work in industry, consultancy, policy, NGOs, or public sector, or even professional accreditation pathways like teachers or health professionals, employers are increasingly looking for people with a master's degree and also have the ability to carry out some research. So indeed, some of our graduates went on and secure those roles because they have a master's and MSc degree from Strathclyde. And we also had students who, after their masters, set up their own business, and become a founder or entrepreneur in these areas, even within the policy, NGO, and public sector area. Yeah.
And the difference between that and an MRes is that for many of our MRes candidates, they are doing an MRes because they're unsure if they really want to do the full PhD. And it's a really good way to do a smaller, more contained piece of work over a shorter period of time. So it can be a useful bridge to, am I up for doing a PhD? Could I do this for 3 years and write 3 times as much as what I've written for my MRes thesis? For some, they might do an MRes and decide, I don't really want to do a PhD yet, and might move into research assistant roles or specialist analytical roles, or depending on your discipline, field-based scientific careers or lab-based scientific careers. It will very much depend on what your MRes is on, what you might do. And some people might do it and then think, oof, no, I actually think I should have been doing an MSc because I want to change direction and then go to an MSc. So it is about recognizing that these two different degrees have slightly different expectations and trajectories for you. We've kind of alluded already to the expectations, but just to give you an overview once again, for the MSc and the MRes, I'll hand over to Alan.
Thanks. So for the MSc, you have regular assessments. So what this means is for each of the modules, you will have at least one assessment, one assignment. Some modules may have 2 assignments, or they could have assignment 1 in the middle of the semester, and another assignment towards the end of the semester. So you definitely get regular assessed throughout the year before the dissertation. Because it's a structured teaching activity, you get assigned coursework and sometimes exams or tests as a way of scaffolding or helping you with the learning process. We never design assignments or tests to catch students' lack of knowledge on something. It's always positive and helping you develop that awareness of wanting to learn more and that curiosity. The dissertation, as I said before, is less intense than MRes because it's usually in semester 3, where you have already developed your knowledge and understanding about the discipline in the first 2 semesters. And it's really just about applying that knowledge to a smaller research project. For the MSc, you will be expecting lots of lectures and seminars with support from tutors, and not just one or two tutors, but several tutors in the department that you're going to be studying with. And you get lots of opportunities to engage with fellow classmates, to ask questions about the reading, about the tasks throughout the year. Wendy.
Whereas the MRes, a long-term project, not as long as a PhD, because it's over 1 year rather than 3 if you're doing a full-time PhD. But that does mean that you can be quite quickly faced with data collection pressures. So you need to plan and design your project quite quickly. So compare that to the dissertation in the MSc, which is happening towards the end of the latter third of the academic year. You're actually having to start planning your thesis and your dissertation and your project at the beginning of the academic year. Depending on what you're doing in terms of data-wise, you do need to plan carefully to make sure that you can get that data in the time scale that you have. And key to supporting this is the relationship you have with your supervisors. You will meet with your supervisors at least once a month and have a supervision meeting to help plan your progress through your project. You will have progress reviews 6 months and then at the end of the year to check that you're on target to produce your thesis as expected. So this does require quite a lot of self-management. You do need to be able to independently set yourself targets, complete those targets, and do them on time. So it's something to be aware of. On the next slide, I've got a few true or false statements for you to have a think about. Some people might think that MRes has fewer lectures, so therefore it's easier. I think that that's false. I think Alan would agree with me. I think they're both equally hard, and regardless, but you do need to do the work to actually keep on top of it. You don't necessarily need a supervisor before applying for an MRes. For some of our MRes programs, they are supervisor-led projects. So you would reach out to somebody who's got a project in mind and apply to see if you might be a good fit for that project. So it would be a bit like if you're applying for any PGR degree, you reach out, you find out who's doing work in an area that you're interested in, and you have a conversation with them if it's a student-led project. Depend on your subject, so just be wary of that because some of our subjects are supervisor-led projects only. True or false, does an MSc keep your career options open? I think it probably does. I'm wondering what Alan would say to this. I think that an MRes is a statement about your depth of knowledge in a disciplinary area, whereas an MSc might give you a bit more of that broader option. So that's something to bear in mind as well. He's nodding. Good. I can see that you're nodding. And then only MRes students can go on to do a PhD. That's false. Many of our MSc students thoroughly thrive and enjoy the dissertation element, and they get the urge to continue. So you don't have to have an MRes to do a PhD. You can certainly apply to do a PhD with an MSc. So don't feel that you're having to make your decisions at too early a stage. So really, in terms of decisions, I think these are the questions you should be asking yourself. I'll maybe just go through this, Alan, because it's probably easier rather than swapping over. So if you enjoy structured teaching, then an MSc is probably for you. If you really don't enjoy structured teaching, ask yourself, do you enjoy long periods of independent research? If the answer to that is yes, and you think you might want to do a PhD, but you're unsure, then perhaps the MRes is for you. If you don't really know if you want to commit to a PhD yet, then maybe you want to look for an MSc that's got a strong research component. So that's where it's good to look at the core modules that Alan was talking about earlier to see how many of those are research methods based and giving you enough training to potentially pique your interest for lots of different research project ideas.
If I just add, Wendy, so you may enjoy long periods of independent research. That's yes. Are you considering a PhD? That's also yes. But you also need to have a research project in mind to sign up for the student-led MRes. You can't go on an MRes without an idea of the project that you're going to be doing.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, you need to write the proposal as part of the application process. If you don't enjoy long periods of independent research, then it might be that you need to look again at the MSc and recognise that there will be structured teaching, but perhaps pick one that's more seminar-based rather than lecture-based. So it's about identifying which is the right one for you. So ask yourself, what are your career goals? How do you prefer to learn? Are you prepared for self-directed research? And do you have a topic area that you're really passionate about? Or do you want a stepping stone to a PhD? Because I think that's the questions that you need to ask yourself when making a decision about which master's level direction you want to go in. So to summarise, I think as we've shared with you, MSc gives breadth, structure, a little bit of flexibility, whereas the MRes has much more depth, independence and research training in a specific area, but both lead to excellent careers. The right choice is going to depend on what's right for you, your learning style, your goals, what your dreams and aspirations are. On the next slide, we have some statements from our current MSc students about, you can see these on our website, about how fantastic they found doing the MSc that they chose to do. I'll let you have a look at them, but I'm not going to read them out. But you get the idea. And on my next slide I have here, these are the current MRes opportunities that we have at the moment across HAS. As you can see in political science, it's supervisor-led projects only, so you can't apply with your own project for that particular MRes, but you can potentially come up with a proposal for some of the other areas. This is a changing field of what's available for MRes, but these are the ones that are open at the moment. And I think I've just got a couple more slides. I'll let Alan talk about this one here.
Thanks, Wendy. So on this slide, you can see the breadth of the discipline or subjects we are offering in humanities and social sciences. We have diplomacy, education, creative writing, gender studies, history, law, politics, public health, social policy, social work, and TESOL. All of these subject areas are associated with one or more master's or MSc programs. So if you just go on to the HAS website, which I believe Moira will send you, you can then click on those subject areas and see whether there are programs that you're particularly interested in. And I completely agree with Wendy. It's your decision, and you have to think about whether you prefer a more research-focused or more taught program. And even within the taught program, you have the flexibility and the choice of choosing programs that have a more extended training on research methodology, and those who has just one research methods module, because it's the minimum requirements for all masters to have at least one module on research methods. But yeah, please feel free to chat with us and ask us for information about any of these subject areas or MSc or MRes programs. We'll be delighted to answer any questions.
So that's the next slide was the questions. I'll stop the